Okay. Good morning, guys. Hi, I'm Michelle Carpenter, and welcome to Keeping It Real. Today, I have another lovely guest by the name of Geoffrey Oelsner. And Jeff is a wonderful, wonderful musician. I've already been privy to his sound, but he's more than that. And Jeff is an author, and I'm going to introduce Jeff and just tell you a little bit about him. We've got so much to talk about, I think, Jeff. You know, it's one of those things where we're just going to see where we go. But welcome to Keeping It Real and welcome to being with me today.
Thank you, and hello, all you people out there whose faces I can't see.
So this is a little bit about Jeff, guys. Jeff Oelsner is an author and musician and grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and earned his master's degree in social work from the University of Georgia. Jeff practiced psychotherapy, music therapy, clinical hypnotherapy, and massage therapy for over 30 years before his retirement. Currently, with his love for the earth coupled with a rich mix of experiences of attunement to nature, Jeff seeks to support and share pioneering regenerative approaches to our climate crisis and to affirm our largely unexplored capacities to connect with and directly benefit our natural environments. Jeff, tell me a bit about attunement to nature. What does that mean?
That's the right way to start. Well, first of all, I don't want anyone to think that there's one way to do this. Rather, I'm really interested in my listeners here considering what might be your easiest, most natural way to already connect and feel close to yourself and nature. And now I'll tell you about the way that kind of came to me first. I think the first thing that happened was when I was 16 years old, I met a landscape artist who was naturally connected. He had just grown up feeling a sense of non dual awareness of the farmland of Kansas. And as he developed his art, that deepened and deepened to the point that as a teenager, I was able to feel for days after being with this fellow a profound sense of closeness to nature and a sense of the details of everything that I saw. So I already had an experience of how human consciousness can enhance our awareness of nature in the presence of another person who's very powerful, very connected. What happened next was that I met a whole group of people with this kind of connection and joined them. I was um, I was a student at Oberlin College, which is a small liberal arts school in the United States. And for my junior year, I went to Aberdeen, Scotland, to the university there. And about a week or two after I'd gotten there, I saw that there was a lecture going to happen about a spiritual community called the Findhorn community, which is a little bit north of Aberdeen in Scotland. I went to the lecture, and it might have been a week or two afterwards that I hitchhiked up to this community and began a relationship with the three founders and the few people that were there that has continued now all the way through to the present, where the community is several hundred people and going strong. When I first got there, I had the experience of working in the garden. And the garden turned out to be kind of a famous place as the 60s went on. Findhorn was established in 1962. I got there in 69. And right around that time, what in the United States we would call a county extension agent that checks the quality of the soil and helps people. Uh, the Scottish version of that came and checked out the garden at Findhorn. And this garden was built on sandy soil right next to a large inlet or bay, Findhorn Bay. There really wasn't much in the soil except the sand and some seaweed and a few soil amendments that had been added. Yet, this fellow who checked the soil discovered that it had all of the elements of a good garden, including rare trace elements and minerals, which is impossible, at least scientifically. But it drew the interest of a lot of really open minded people in the British Soil Association, organic gardeners, and others. And by the time I came there were enough people that we would attune to bring forward some of the great results that happened in this garden that later made it even more famous. Huge vegetables. that
Wow.
made it kind of a demonstration project for spirit, if you will. We would attune, and how we did this was simply to stand together before working, often holding hands. You might say we were holding minds as well, sensitive to each other, quieting inside some, not perfectly quiet, not nirvanic peace, but some degree of quiet, and holding very briefly an intention to connect with ourselves, with the land, with the tools we were going to be working with the work we were going to be doing, through this quiet, through what Dorothy McLean, one of the three founders of the community, called the living silence. And there was already a field of kind of ambient uh, peace and harmony and connection with nature there established when I came. Yeah, I experienced that sort of group effect that can happen when more than one are gathered together in presence, and in this case, in the service of the earth and of the
Wow.
garden. And although I learned, some of the particulars of how the people at Findhorn saw these things, and many of them were clairvoyant and did see and feel nature spirits and what they called devas, or what we might call angels, overlighting the area. My experience was essentially one of a deep, warm kind of sense of homecoming and connection.
Were you
Um,
barefoot standing around, or were you in shoes,
I
if I may
wasn't always,
ask?
I wasn't barefoot, but it would have been a good idea. And I find myself frequently in that disposition to this day.
So it does make a difference because science is showing that it's incredibly important to be connected to earth and to nature by being barefoot. Is that true?
Absolutely. And I'm continuing to explore that after having read the book Earthing, which really
Wow.
interested me. I guess it just brought back to me kind of my own common sense about the whole matter. Of course, it's a good idea to touch the earth. So anyway, just to briefly finish with this, Dorothy McLean, who did introduce this concept of attunement to me and largely to the Findhorn community, spent the first 10 years of her doing this kind of practice simply attuning in meditation to what she called the living silence. So she didn't try to connect with any specific aspect of being. She was connecting with being with a capital B, not as a result of effort, but actually the opposite, as a
Mm.
result of let go.
Wow.
And after 10 years, when a plant needed some attention in the garden, or there was a particular quality of energy that felt lacking, she discovered that she could go to being with a capital B, rest in this living silence, hold a very subtle and very clear intention to be in touch with whatever particular aspect of source, whatever expression of spirit she wanted to be in touch with, and then again, to let go. It's a
Mm.
whole lot like letting a letter go into the mailbox. It's not going to go anywhere unless you let it go and let it get
Yes.
sent. And then the next part is absolutely effortless. You either rest and receive impressions, or you rest in spirit and you don't. You know,
Oh,
and either way, it's not meant to be effortful, but rather to allow you an opening and allow you a connection. And that's what I've been doing all these years. And I don't know if I would be doing it, if I hadn't had the experience at Findhorn of the extraordinary results the garden was getting and the beautiful feelings that I had, or B, the experiences that I had shortly after Dorothy visited us here in uh, northwest Arkansas in the Ozark Mountains where we live in
wow.
1980. And she did a workshop on attunement with us. It was really interesting. Um, if we were doing it, my listeners in your area, we might decide that we would attune together to the spirit or the deva of your particular region. That's what we did in our workshop for this particular part of the Northwest Arkansas Ozarks. And it was fascinating to compare notes after this. And Dorothy had us take notes, in fact, and write. She found that sometimes writing helped her to ground and bring into some kind of easier to remember form things that weren't verbal. but they came as subtle impressions. So we all did this and we compared notes, and it was really impressive. And that gave Leslie and I enough impetus to do attunements on our own. And the kind of key deal breaking attunement was we were in a field that we had cleared, a rocky field where we were doing some farming outside of the country, outside of the city, excuse me. And we decided we would attune that day to the deva of the wind, to the spirit of the wind, if you will. I I guess for some of our listeners, this could be a little bit of a stretch. They might feel more comfortable thinking here of energies than
Mhm.
entities, and that
Mhm.
is understandable.
Mhm.
We're experiencing a sense of something possible there, and so we went to this quiet place, Michelle, closed our eyes, and when I opened them, there was about a 10-foot tall whirlwind standing directly in front of us, stationary, as if to
Wow.
say, "Okay, you asked. Um, here's a here's a demonstration." So
Yes.
I don't know why I felt I must whisper, but I was, Leslie, open your eyes, and and she did, and we both saw this, which I think was important.
Mm.
And then it whisked away. It had been witnessed, and it made its way off into the wherever these things go. And that really got our attention.
Yeah.
And I don't know if all attunements since then have ever been quite as dramatic. Some have been very dramatic.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes dramatic sleeve tugging kinds of incidents happen to people as a demonstration to bring them deeper, not only into their own development and connection, but also it's possible that I was given this so that I could tell you this story right now
Yes.
and pass it on as a kind of trust and faith producing experience to our listeners.
Well, that's beautiful. And sometimes we don't see because we're tangible as human beings, I think, most of us, and we want to have that tangible experience. But it also brings me to the saying that ask and receive. It's that simple. And if we look at life, if we look at energy, if we look at human beings, a lot of times I most certainly am learning to ask, and because it's the way we've been conditioned. But for me, there's always the connection. The connection is always, always, always there. It's just that we're relearning to have that connection, not only with ourselves, but with our, for want of a better statement, our spirit team. And,
Yes.
may I give you an example of like this plant? Well, there's actually three plants in this pot behind me. And I often look at it and I'm like, not one of those plants look at each other or go look at each other and they go, ew, like how did Michelle plant three of us in one freaking pot? Like, what was she thinking? Because I just loved all of them and they were small and they're all just growing together in harmony. And the one's like, okay, I'm going to make space, so I'm just going to grow out the pot for you. And the one's growing up, and it's like, that's beautiful nature, isn't it? It's just so simple.
It is. And I can imagine your delight that you're sharing with me right now actually feeding back into those plants right at this very moment.
Oh, completely. And that's why one of my simple gifts in life is, and it drives a lot of people mad. I have some friends who are like, just stop giving me pot plants. But I love to get plants from other people's gardens where I can just see energy thriving in the garden and how the plants are thriving, but also gifting others. I love to just take off a piece and say thank you to the pot and then or thank you to the plant and then gift it to somebody who's moving to their home or just as a like an extension of like here we go, this is nature and it's breathing and it's living and it's consciousness.
Yeah. And it's a gift from you and nature. When you just said that you can see the energy of vital plants in the garden, that's the sort of thing that really interests me. When somebody starts talking that way, I want to draw them out because I want them to feel like they have their own natural ways of doing this. And of course, you do, and you know that. But some people kind of marginalize their experiences. They oh, that, well, or they forget because it's out of the ordinary. And one of the main reasons I wrote my book is that Okay, it's always wonderful to connect with nature, but climate change is calling us
Mm,
for all possible creative responses. And one of the ways that we're doing that is turning to the intelligence of nature.
mm,
People who are doing attunement are doing it, but also people that are studying various regenerative forms of agriculture and marine restoration, and the whole topic of biomimicry, where people are learning from how plants and animals function and applying that to different kinds of human inventions in a more organic way. All of that seems so essential right now, and even more essential to me would be just the feeling of people receiving the feeling of our interbeing, what Thich
mm,
Nhat Hanh called our interbeing or interconnectedness
mm,
with all life. Going forward, we're going to need it. And I think it's possible that because the Findhorn community demonstrated this interface that you just described between human consciousness and plant consciousness, I think it's very possible that more and more of us are going to be finding ways not only to explore it, but to benefit the environment. And I just wanted to create, hmm, there's songs, there's poems, there's stories, and there's a scientific study, but it's all really leaning in the direction of trying to empower people to see the possibilities of not only absolutely essential grassroots and political action, communal action,
mm,
many farms, many organic gardeners,
mm.
all kinds of different policy changes, protecting wilderness, all of these things, yes, but also what we can each do individually.
And
And
you know that for me is what is so pivotal. Is it's starting with ourselves, taking responsibility for ourselves, because I find sometimes I want to teach my kids about this and about that and da, 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 and then I get so lost up in the cause, and then I'm like, okay, Michelle, just bring yourself back to, let's start with recycling. Let's start with exactly that. Let's plant a seed. Let's give back to the seed. And something I found with moving from South Africa to New Zealand, my husband and I were blown away as to how the difference in the color of meat was. And it
oh,
was vast. I mean, it was like sort of like a light pink in South Africa, most of the meat. And then we came here and it was like this dark red. And, a lot of I'm not massively researched in terms of the way the farming's done, but we couldn't believe the difference in the texture, because you just like, for me, it was an assumption of, okay, beef is beef and it tastes the same, but it actually doesn't. It's farmed incredibly differently across the world, I'm assuming. But this leads me to asking you a question. Um, how do we as humans not become, or hang on, first of all, let me ask, are we too precious or how do we not become too precious? And the reason why I'm asking this is because, yes, everything is consciousness. Uh, at the same time, plants give back to us, do they not? They like, as we're giving back to them, they're giving energy or they're giving something back to us. But how do we not become precious? And because I have a friend who was telling me about a book about a woman that used to connect with plants, and she was like, she used to do foraging, and but then she got so connected to the plants that she actually didn't want to eat them anymore.
oh, I see. Like that.
Yeah, so how does that make sense in what I'm asking, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm exploring it in my mind. I'm hearing precious. I'm hearing um, out of balance, perhaps, in terms of
Yes, that's a great.
understanding. Maybe if we understand that we're part of the great chain of being and are going to be ultimately, physically at least, metabolized by the earth, it wouldn't be quite as difficult for us to feel a sense of equality and both reverence and also gratitude when we eat the plant.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, depending upon your values and your sense of what's right, the animal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have a really wise answer for that beyond that, except that somehow it points towards a need for balance. That person whose example
Yeah.
yay. At the same time, some people are so damned sensitive, and maybe in some ways, there's some element of wisdom that can be found there until it all devolves into too much speculation and sort of too much fantasy, and that's about all that I really know how to
Well,
say.
we're an intelligent source of our own, but I also think, and this is incredibly judgmental, sometimes as humans, we're the thickest race. We lack so much compassion at times, for each other. And, um, and I just feel that sometimes, and again, it's incredibly judgmental of me to even say this, but it's, if we just came together, like when you spoke of being in Scotland and you came together and you like, it's like almost like I could see myself being there, and it felt so pure, and it felt like you were just in your presence of being, and no one can ever, what am I trying to say? If we could just show up in that way on a continuous basis, wouldn't it
Please,
be wonderful?
wouldn't it be wonderful? And even as we're all together here now in this moment for the viewer, we can wish ourselves or see ourselves is a better word as
Mm,
part of a blessing field,
mm,
because all of this whole conversation is happening because of caring,
mm.
our caring for the earth, and for
Yes,
communicating and being in touch, and you
yes,
all out there are part of that field. So yes, I couldn't give you a very wise or full answer about what you were asking about, but I've certainly run into people who were so extraordinarily sensitive that it was hard for them to live on this planet.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very tough, at times, and I've seen it myself and experienced it. And sometimes I feel like, you've come from a therapist background, is that sometimes we're in such self-punishment of, and you said it perfectly, our value system and our belief system. And sometimes that punishment can run so deep, or the suffering can run so deep, that I don't know, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but it's like, sometimes I think sometimes I just want to shake human beings and just say, "Come on, guys, we've got this." And how can we just show up in our presence of love? Because that's what we ultimately learning, aren't we? Is learning to love.
That's what your friend here is still learning, that's for sure.
And may I say, your young age? I mean, guys, would you believe that this man is in his 70s?
Sometimes we get the
And I
hesitate.
love that. I love the wisdom of working with people or talking to people who are mature and have the wisdom. And it's like that perfect asking, what would you say to your 20-year-old self, or your children, or like, what would you impart to them or yourself?
Please be kinder to yourself. You deserve it.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
I find myself wanting to share a poem or two that
Please
illustrate
do.
attunement in some ways. I think that
Please do.
poetry and song often start from that place of sensitivity that is akin to and part of attunement, that place of receptivity.
Awesome. Please do.
So there's this, so many of us connect with trees, and so many of us find that there's some tree or trees that are particularly, they're almost like stations of peace for us. And there was
Yes.
an oak tree. We have a lot of oaks in this part of the world. There was a big oak tree outside our window when we were raising our children, our two kids. And I would go and touch a branch or look at the tree sometimes when I needed steadying. And so I wrote this. And in this, I think you're going to hear how I attuned by way of the tree, really, as a portal, but also by way of a sense of the music of the wind in the trees, and
Mm,
this tree in particular. It's called Oak Angel. Tree at
wow.
our window, presiding oak, you stand before me, a branching of brown roads, and tell me my roots cannot fail thirst, for in the earth our life is. Old angel, you are singing in the crush of day as you are now in the rose church of twilight. but only now I hear. While we sleep, you walk the deep world breezes, night's cool hand on the brow of our city. So I
Beautiful.
connected with that tree. And another one, if it's okay, I'd like to share.
Please do. Yes.
Is a poem I wrote called Guardians. And it's got 5 stanzas. Leslie and I were driving through the Flint Hills of Kansas, and I was having an experience that day of being very open to impressions of people who were in some way themselves very open to different aspects of nature. So these were either subtle impressions or very convincing projections on my part because they gave rise to this poem. And in the first stanza, I think this person I'll be reading about was open to through the portal of sleep and dreams and listening to the wind. And in the second stanza, you'll hear somebody who was, she's open to the land itself, to the sense of it, its sweep, its contours. In the third stanza, this person I think is open to the animal powers, in this case, a red tailed hawk. And when people are open to animal powers or energies, sometimes in the case of a bird, there may be even a sense of looking down on the earth, an overview.
Mm-hmm.
In the fourth, this person, I believe, is connected through trees, not only the trees above the earth, but the roots below. And in the fifth, it's the most essential connection of all. It's the heart of the matter. It's the connection through love. In fact, love may be the heart of matter itself. So here's the poem, Guardians. And these are place names in Kansas, you'll hear. As we drove toward Council Grove, I thought, seeing darkness deep in a morning window, living there is one who caved in to himself at night, becomes winds rivering through cottonwoods across Kansas, nameless guardians of stream banks and gullies. And later, as we turned into Waukene, I felt brush past me hints of one who holds the entire sway of grasses on this plain, prayers appearing in their sheen open in her mind as she sits in a porch swing, somewhere near the trembling of roads. We headed west through crosswinds, past wheat's gold inscriptions, spying traces in that tall afternoon of one who wheels across cumulus on wings of red-tailed hawks, scattering visions like rain on the earth below. From a distant farmhouse walled in a windbreak, broodings rose up at twilight of one who wears the wet weave of roots gently as her own veins, siphoning life into their outstretched branches. So, on the unsheltered plain, each soul that wakens in its cradle of flesh aligns with space and is drawn out into the guardianship of what it loves most deeply.
Wow. I just feel like I want to crawl up in a ball with my blankie and just like, can you just sing me a lullaby and just keep going? Can I just like have you here on a Sunday afternoon? You have the most beautiful, soothing voice.
Thank you for letting me read. I appreciate that.
Oh, just gorgeous,
Now,
absolutely
I'm sure
gorgeous.
you have some questions you'd like to ask too, so feel
Well,
free.
I do, but I think the biggest thing is at the moment is what's on everybody's lips is about climate change. And we've already said it starts with ourselves, yet my um, my understanding at the moment is that what we've been through in the last 3 years collectively as a human race has been hectic. I mean, that's just to put it mildly. Yet this change, this evolutionary change, which has been happening for such a long time, I think already, and you've worked with scientists and you've worked with remote viewers, which I want to get more into, but This change, personally, for me, I feel has been incredibly necessary for us to wake up to ourselves, to wake up to the simple way of life again. um, Connection. I was originally born in Zimbabwe, and I remember as a young girl when somebody was moving in next door down the road, my mom would say, "Come, Michelle," and we're taking them tea and biscuits, and we welcoming them into the neighborhood.
What happened?
Exactly. What happened? It's like, where are those moments? But those moments, I'm recreating those moments for myself in this beautiful place where we live, where it's just connection, it's taking time. And I use this example time and time again: looking at your barista, looking at your cashier, your reception, just if you're going to, I went the other day to have some blood taken, and I connected with, even though we had to put masks on because we're still in the medical field here, we still have to wear masks. And a part of me goes, "Oh," and then I'm like, "Stop it, Michelle, you don't have to act like a brat. This is where you're going into their place, and this is what it is." But we both had our mask down here. This gentleman who was taking blood, and we just connected with our eyes, and we connected, and I was like, thank you so much. If we just say thank you to those people and just give them that time, is that part of climate change? Would you say, Geoff? Is that part of, because we're the climate, we're the people, we're the energy that's bringing the change,
It
surely?
has, every little bit has to be helping. In an interconnected world, and it has to be a part of it because you're talking about people connecting, and when we're more connected, we're going to be able to respond more intelligently and cooperatively with each other. So
Yeah,
every little bit, every conscious drop of compassion in the bucket helps.
yeah,
I've been so lucky through this connection with the Findhorn community. I've met some people who are, in many ways, a lot more practical and a lot more scientifically grounded than I, who are doing great work. Several in particular are mentioned in the book, and in several cases, I've written musical book reviews, actual songs that go into some detail about the approaches that they're taking to different kinds of agricultural and marine restoration. None of these people are people that are wearing rose colored glasses, and neither am I. But in fact, these folks know even more, by far more than I do, how dire and difficult things are. And yet they're not giving up. They're working so hard, writing books, going to the conferences, working with policymakers, and really making some efforts. And this is happening all around the world. And that's where people getting together and connecting, um, we can bring that together with the topic of climate change in a very specific way here. One of the places that your viewers might find interesting that I didn't reference in the book, which by the way is free, um, at my website, geoffoelsner.com. Um, One of those areas that wasn't mentioned is a website called regeneration.org. Um, Paul Hawken was actually the fellow that kind of broke Findhorn to the world because he wrote a book called The Magic of Findhorn years ago, as when we were both young guys, that talked about the extraordinary size of the vegetables being grown there, which was really again a kind of attention getting thing that was I think probably one of the ways in which spirit drew our attention, just like hopefully our attention is being drawn by these last three chaotic years, both chaotic and potentially ordering years that we've had. And I think that at that website, you will be able to see, if you go to regeneration.org, something of the scope of different projects that are happening around the world to help draw down carbon and to diminish the use of different kinds of uh, fossil fuels and many, many other direct and indirect ways that climate change is being addressed. Um, that's a message of hope that I'm sharing with you all. And it could be vastly amplified by many people that know many more areas than I. But I wanted to share those people that I knew, whose books I knew, and I'd been able to help these people to some degree buy time to write these books. and in certain cases, to send these books to thought leaders and policymakers around the world, people of influence. So that's one aspect of what I've done that I try to give a little report about.
Mm.
Another aspect is to work with a great visionary parapsychologist who works with remote viewing, and in particular precognitive remote viewing.
Can you
And we,
explain that, please? What's the
yes, well,
difference?
precognition is knowing something is going to happen before it happens.
Okay.
And it's like in the sense that it's either right or it's wrong. And in that sense, it's like dowsing. Somebody says you can go 25 feet down now and you'll get water there and it'll be flowing at a rate of 5 gallons per minute or whatever. They're either going to be right or they're wrong. And I'm particularly interested in forms of our awareness. I
Hmm.
might say extrasensory awareness or perception that you can count on that way and that aren't speculative. And so, she, my friend Julia Mossbridge, who wrote the study that I include in the book, worked with um, among herself and her partner 7 precognitive remote viewers with a track record of being able to tell, yes, this is going to happen, and then it happened. And we found 2 very open-minded atmospheric physicists, both climate modelers and people who work with the atmosphere and are deeply studying and deeply concerned about how to understand and address climate change from their perspective. And they submitted 10 very specific questions. And here's where it gets really interesting. Blind tasking is an aspect of remote viewing that's so fascinating. Because remote viewers are so sensitive, one does not want them to have any idea of even the questions they're being asked.
Really?
And
Wow.
so, intricate safeguards from the very beginning of this happening in the United States classified government related remote viewing programs, intricate safeguards were developed so that questions either wouldn't be asked and they'd be put in a safe, and the person that put them in there wouldn't know that, so there wouldn't be a telepathic bleed through, things that intricate. Or sometimes things like the coordinates of longitude and latitude were given, but not to them. They were just put in the safe, and then the person would need to find what was there, which is almost inconceivable. But again, they were either right or they were wrong, and this has been developed by some remote viewers in a way that I think is very credible, and it was applied here in this study, which is called "Can We Heal the Earth with Intuition?" Case report of an intuition guided approach to enhancing exploration in climate science. And that's the study that I introduce in my book and that I help to. I actually conceived the study, and Julia created it in its in its details and in its scientific rigor. And you can read the full study in the book. It's a little bit technical, but I give a kind of a more layperson's introduction to it with an explanation of how I got interested in all this.
Mm.
Um, some of my own experiences of precognition are shared as well, just to make it clear that for me this is very real.
So give us an example, if you don't mind.
Well, I
Like, how
will,
does it
and I
happen
but
for you?
before I do, before I forget, I want to say that the point of this study was not to prove the validity of psychic awareness, or even the correctness of what was received. It was to offer the information that came to these scientists to see what they would make of it. And they did find um, information that led them to further insights. And we're still waiting to develop one area of that. But a good example for me. Okay, precognition. I'm in, I think, ninth grade, eighth or ninth grade, and I'm at my school. We're having lunch, and there's going to be a drawing the next day of numbers in a jar, and I'm sorry. They're going to say how many beans there are in a jar, and whoever guesses the right number wins a prize. I don't even remember what the prize was. It was something having to do with school spirit, I'm sure. So this is going to happen the next day, and this is all we're told. And all of a sudden, um, I say to the guys at the table, it's going to be 452. Remember, I said this 452. This comes rushing out of my mouth. You are, I think, familiar with trance experience, and I wasn't aware that I was in any kind of altered state at all, however. It just came rushing out. And it seemed utterly improbable. And the next day before the drawing, again, I'm okay, guys, remember it's 452. Yeah. And when it was 452, I mean, it really grabbed me. It really gave me a sense of, okay, how does this work? How is this
Yes,
possible?
yes.
But and oh, this is a new dimension of and the fellow who was the presiding teacher at the table at the head of the table was a science teacher, and it opened his mind too. So it
Wow.
may be that again, um, there was more to this experience than just serving my awareness. It may have been for to open up some other people's minds at that time too. And it did open my mind, and ever since then I've been interested in the possibilities
Wow.
of
Love
psychic.
how you said that. It opens a
Psychic
person's mind,
awareness.
hey? It
Yeah,
because it does. That's
and
I
it
think
opened,
it's the
it
knowing
opened
is
me
there.
to possibility. And then I became really interested in how can these things be applied to lessen human suffering and improve quality of life. And that's what you as a somebody with mediumistic skills can do. I became especially interested in how it might be brought into certain areas of scientific research. And about 12 years ago, once I was beginning to experience really the grief, the kind of the pre the early tremors of distress about climate change that more and more of us were becoming aware of, I really began to ask how these things could be related to climate change. I try to explain a little in the book about some of my early work um, with another remote viewer named Joseph McMoneagle. I don't want to say too much about this if you have other things you'd like to ask about, but this is my little contribution, and it's my pleasure to be able to share this, hoping that people will make their own very unique individual creative responses to this too.
Well, I love how you put that, Jeff, because I think so much is out there on social media nowadays, and I think so many people are questioning, like what is real, what is the truth? Because so many untruths have been shared with us. So much of, um, it's something that's just come to mind is I'll see millions of views on, and it is real. It's not saying it's not real, but like a turtle who's covered in fishing wire, or fishing line, and you see that just, and for me that's just spreading, personally that's just spreading such fear. It's like, okay, well, what else can we do? Because there's I know when I've tuned into, and this is just personally with the beings of light that come through me, but what keeps coming to mind, I think a year or two a year ago, I had put a message out about how the whales were whaling. We as humans were whaling, but the whales were really picking up on that, on the field of where we were at, and then all of a sudden, all these whales were beaching themselves like we had it here in New Zealand. I can't remember how many whales it was, but there were like 30 or 40 whales that had beached themselves, and these kinds of things were unheard of. And then I'd sit back and go, like this is true, like what my beings are showing us, and it's not wanting to share fear once again. So how how can we displace the fear and show up in terms of Mother Nature's listening, Gaia is listening, just like you said, my plants are listening, they're feeling that excitement. Like, how can we show up and do something different? Like, as opposed to going, because I feel like that knee jerk reaction happens with so many of us. Like I was explaining earlier on, I get so overwhelmed because there's so much to do. And then I go, okay, Michelle, What can I teach my kids?
What one thing can I do? So often, if one can do one thing, if one has felt kind of stopped, it opens things up just to begin to spin the wheel a little bit, to move things a little bit. But I'll tell you what has certainly I experienced some fear about what might happen. I think it's helped me a great deal to feel like I'm doing something. At least I feel some sense of agency. But
Yes.
there has been also a sense of connecting with other people that have different skills has helped me greatly because I don't think one of the things about fear that may often be true, and especially with trauma, is that there's a sense of aloneness or
Oh,
being cut
amazing.
off from help. So to be able to connect with other people has been really important. Not just to attune to nature. We are nature, as you were indicating earlier. We're human beings. Our bodies are nature. We're part of nature. So
Yes.
that connection is important. But there's been another thing that's been a kind of alchemical experience I've had, and I've worked with this through two songs that I've written. I could feel the grief and sorrow in myself, and those aren't things that I wanted to push away, even though I wanted to push them away.
Yes.
the,
Yes.
the truth loving, honest part of me knew that these places needed to find some space inside of me that I wasn't resisting.
Hmm.
Because when I resist a difficult feeling, it just adds to the difficulty,
Sure.
oftentimes, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's always true. So there was that. And then there's in me a tremendous sense of joy about nature. Um, in particular, certain birds, certain times of day, like at dawn when the birds are singing, there's this overflowing sense of joy. Now, why would I want to take leave of that either? So, how can these things be brought together in a way where both are honored?
Hmm.
I find that in the process of the continuing process of doing this, that something is opening in me of a more resilient, realistic nature.
Hmm.
I tried to write a song. The first song I wrote about this, I'd be willing to sing it
Please do.
as
Yes.
roughly as my voice might be. We could
That's not
try it.
true. I heard you earlier on.
It's,
I
it's,
might break out in like a whistle with you or a
I'm out on
chant.
a limb a little. I'm a little out on a limb, twittering on the high notes, but we'll see. Anyway, when I was 15 years old, my grandma wrote down a poem that I must have shared with her, and it included the line "Tangled Time." I came back on my grandmother's writing a few years ago, and I thought I would write a song that, in which, in the first part, I tried to make space for the grief and the concern that I'm feeling, and also the indignation and anger that I feel at times when I see how people are being treated by our leaders, certain of our leaders,
Sure.
past or in the case of the United States, past and hopefully gone leaders.
Mhm.
And then in the second part of the song, to bring in some of the joy that I experience and to let these two things live together. And although this might be a little kind of odd or I don't know, out there for some of your listeners, I hope that you can understand how letting these things coexist in my being opened me and broadened me in a way that allows me to flow a little more with the present situation, which is so dire. So, anyway, scrolling through our local morning paper. You getting the sound okay?
Hmm.
Looking
Yes.
for good news, but finding virus and crime, climate change denial and deception. What a tangled web in a desperate, changing time. Oh, a tangled web at a turning point in time. So many people getting the short end now, misled by those who try to keep us blind with lies and walls and convoluted mazes. It's hard to see straight in a twisted time. Oh, to see the simple truth in a tangled time. And I want to be singing a simple song, singing a hopeful song. Oh, and I want to be singing a song of love and peace to heal your heart and mind. May we sing a simple song in this tangled time. Waves of sorrow sometimes overtake us as oceans swallow more and more shoreline. We're gonna have to fan the fires of hope inside us. What a slippery slope we're gonna have to climb. Oh, to make it through to a more enlightened time. And I wanna be singing a simple song, singing a hopeful song. Oh, and I wanna be singing a song of love and peace to heal your heart and mind. May we sing a simple song in this tangled time. Now comes the joy. Now that Carolina wren outside our window, she's perched up where the high wisteria twines. She sings her sunrise song in a radiant rapture. She sings her simple song in the tangled vines. Sipping green tea on a frosty morning, I watch as dawn throws rainbows through the pines. And I hear a cheerful song of celebration as the happy birds absorb the warm sunshine. They begin to sing along with her in time, singing a simple song, hopeful, singing a hopeful song, singing a joyful song. Oh, and I want to be singing a song of love and peace to heal your land and mine. May we sing a simple song in this tangled time. I hear the heart of life inside 'em singing. Their joy rings out as the living daylight climbs. My spirits lift as I rest here in this blessing, and I watch my worried, wound up mind unwind. Oh, their joyful song just takes me out of time. Singing a simple song, singing a hopeful song, joyful, singing a joyful song, singing a blessing song. Oh, and I want to be singing a song of love and peace to heal your land and mine. May we sing a simple song in this tangled time.
Beautiful. Thank you. Incredible.
There you
Wow.
are, my friends.
What beautiful words. And oh gosh, my heart is just so expanded and open and receiving to that. So thank
Thank
you.
you. I think music amplifies our field. Singing can do that. And thank you for allowing that song. It's a joy for me to be able to share that, and and how that song worked in me. You know, maybe the larger point is how much creativity is part of the way that we lift ourselves spiritually and explore all elements of ourselves so that nothing needs to be left out or pushed aside, but again, it can be brought into balance with the other, say, stronger, healthier elements of ourselves, the less fearful elements. And
Well,
knowing that each one of these elements, fear is very natural. It's not something we want to feed.
Absolutely.
Grief is very natural in the case of the sense of impending loss and the loss that we can see in the environment.
Yeah.
The expression of these things is innately healing because these things, when they get locked inside, they remain turbulent within us. So thank you for letting me express too.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. And before I started recording, you and I were talking about grief and trauma, and it's such an important, if I may say, it's such an important um, I don't want to say it's a statement, but to share with others. I mean, you spoke about anger before you sang the song and the anger, and in my head I was thinking, what? This man gets angry like you're just so soothing. But we all do, we all
Sure.
do. And is music your expression of working through that anger? Because it's so important. So many people have got this real obscure view of what spirituality is meant to be like. And I'm like, dudes, if dancing makes us feel good, that's being spiritual. If being in a putting our hands in soil, that's just think about kids aren't going,
That's right. Oh, putting our hands in soil. Yes.
making
Oh,
mud cakes. That's what I used to do as a kid. And now I'm like, oh my God, like, and I go, Michelle, just stop being so precious. Once again, just put your hands, because I think I don't want the soil under my nails. I'm like, damn it, you've got a scrubbing brush. Just stop it. But we become so particular. But I think that spirituality is so, it's almost like it's creating this perception of the way we're supposed to be, and there's so much pressure behind it. I've most certainly seen in my own way of showing up authentically for myself, because I love to dance, I love to sing, I love to play music, and it's like, well, how can that not be spiritual, what you've just sung?
it's age old spiritual expression, to be sure. Another thought came to me too, in addition to connecting with other people. It seems like it's a really strategic thing to do to find change agents, people that are making a difference in your community or beyond your community. And maybe for me, it's in particular, it's young change agents, um, and to
No.
support them
Yes.
emotionally, to support them spiritually, to support them in some cases, if you can, materially in various ways. But I find, I'm looking for those kinds of places of leverage that are strategic places, but places where I feel some joy, not just a sense of, oh God, I've got to do this. Because I love what Howard Thurman, as a black American theologian, he said, don't ask what you can do to save the world, ask what you can do that makes you come alive. Because what the world needs now is people who have come alive.
I
And
love
out
that.
of that kind of living joy and energy can come real action. But
Yes.
first, there has to be not just a should, but an I want to, a big
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Yeah, look at me. I'm like, yes.
It's sort of kind of deep passion that really is a driving energy, and not a driven energy, but a driving energy,
Yeah,
moving.
it's a very different, hey, it's a very different way of being expressive, and that the it's yeah, you've actually just said something so important, driven and driving. For me, the way I would interpret that is, one is the energy is moving, it's flowing. When we're driven, it's almost like the energy is here. It's like, okay, I'm driven, I've got this, I've got my shit
That's
together.
it.
But no, we
That's
don't.
what I mean to say. Yeah, and because I've experienced both in myself, in my educational conditioning and all of those things, it's really useful to tell the difference between those two.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is
So
a difference.
there is a difference. You're 100% correct. You see, there's the wisdom. There's the wisdom of somebody who's experiencing life and has experienced life in many different ways. I mean, 30 years with, was it 35 or 38 that you've been involved in your different therapeutic work?
It's around 35 years, and I'm
35.
still, as we were talking before the podcast, I'm still so very interested in fields like detraumatization, traumatology, and how that's developing.
Yeah.
Some of the ways in which you and other people are bringing intuition into the medical field, and other things more and more credibly, more and more acceptance for that. Have you done any medical intuitive work?
I do. I am able to connect into the body and the organs. And I don't know if this is the answer because I've never really researched it. I just get completely um, present in the moment of working with the energy of the body and what's been shown to me. And one moment that absolutely blew me away was a client. I got guided to show her a picture. I knew she had heart conditions going on, but I didn't know exactly what. So I was guided to go into Google because I work with pictures in my mind that they show me, and and I,
Oh, okay.
I said to her, "This is the picture of the heart," and it was like an animated picture, and I said, "There's a hole here." And because they couldn't discover what was going on they said there was something up with her heart, and we did a lot of emotional work around. And I said, there's a hole behind here, and they went and they looked for it and they found the hole, and I was like, wow. So that
I
was
love,
amazing.
I love,
That was the guidance coming through, and so yeah.
I love it that you were like, wow, and that's how I've been too. It's like I didn't do that, but it happened. Is kind of the feeling. Now
Yes.
you may have more of a feeling of a handle on your abilities than that. Anyway, it's so important that we be able to discuss these things in a bit of detail because what you've just shared, a couple things. You see images and pictures. Um, Other people out there, when they attune, if I want to use that word in a very broad sense, to just being receptive, you'll have a different energetic vocabulary. Some of you may not see pictures. You may hear a word like like Socrates talks about the daemon or the inner guide or the still small voice. Some of you may get goosebumps or get physical sensations of cold or of some kind of presence coming closer. In
Mm,
other words, there's so many different ways that these sensitivities can operate, and sometimes just as a sense of knowing, without a lot of special effects. And
mhm.
and so I'm bringing this forth from what you were saying and some of my own experiences, hoping that people will start, if they haven't already, kind of watching for what are your own ways of experiencing, yes, subtle experience, but also when you tune up your senses, when you really open up your hearing and really listen deeply, and what I call the curtain of thought kind of parts, and you're quieter inside. What's
Mm,
it like to tune up your physical senses?
mhm.
Sometimes there's kind of a continuum between those senses and more subtle capacities that come into play too. So all of this is really interesting to me, and just like it's so fun to talk with people. If you ask them about their dreams, they usually will get pretty animated and share. It's really fun to find out what people's experiences are already.
Absolutely. And some stuff, I don't know about yourself, but some stuff I can't yet articulate how it's happened or how it was shown or how it was done. Or and like if somebody said, "Well, Michelle, how did you develop your abilities?" Like I know there's clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant, and for me it's just developed over time, and it's just it feels like the higher my vibration has become, and sometimes that can be a curse for me personally, because when I'm in a trance space, I have to really bring myself back to being grounded. And I say it can be a curse because I'm just there. I'm just picking up on different, and sometimes I have to go, is this my thought process or is this somebody else's thought
Well,
process? Have you ever
that's
had that, Jeff?
me too occasionally. Yes, yes, indeed.
Yes. And I'm pretty straightforward at the best of times. I've really had to reel it back in because I make this standing joke that my filter system doesn't work, but sometimes it really doesn't. I'm like I'll be in a crowd and I'll be socializing. Next minute something will just come out of my mouth and I'll go, I wasn't thinking that. I'll go, who said that? Who was thinking that?
Okay,
And I'm like, shit.
it's good to talk. It's good to talk with you about these things. Are there other particular ways that you pick up information that? Well, I know you just said that it's hard to put into words some of these subtle ways. Can you say any? Can you make some more words about that?
Okay, so for me the wording is that I'm learning is that I work very multidimensionally. So I work within the present moment of what the energy is showing me. So, as an example, if whether it be on Zoom or somebody who's here in person as a client, uh, it's that I can see immediately when the energy drops. Like there's a sense that just happens, and they may not even move their eyes. You know, there's NLP that goes with that, where you're going left or right or down, and there's not even a moment that that happens. They might just be like looking at me, and I can just have there's just a sense, and I'll say, "What did you just think?" I could just, and I would know even at times when the thought has been shown to me, and then the person would articulate it. But for me, the biggest thing is just the knowing of the tuning into the heart. You know, as soon as somebody is experiencing a moment of grief, loss, sadness, even frustration, I could just feel it's like a contraction. It's almost like, you know, the body contracts, but the energy is contracting. And then as soon as they let go, and that's where the embodied practice, which is what I love about Peter Levine, is the embodiment of letting go, is where the expansion happens. Exactly, the expansion happens, and that's through breath work, through just connecting into the field of all that is. So I don't know if I've articulated it in the best
Well,
way I know how.
you're doing a good job right now, and with a sense of, with Levine's work and others, to create a sense of safety. It's so important.
Yes,
Being there
yes,
to witness all of that. And oh, it's so helpful in his work and that of others when one understands that sometimes trembling is not fear, but the release of
yes,
fear or of
yes,
trauma, that crying is not pain, but the release of pain, that there's
correct.
discharge that happens. If that is understood, sometimes it's much easier, and one can reassure somebody one is with that way, that this is
Yes,
part of a real
and
healing process.
exactly, and that's where I truly, 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 truly believe that everybody has the knowing, and I feel like that's part of my role is walking with everybody on their journey of helping them to remember that if we were formed in a mother's stomach with one sperm, and there's millions of sperms that have chased that one egg, and that's a miracle in itself. And and then we grow into this baby, which none of us have ever had to go, okay, did you ever sit and say to your wife, alrighty, that baby's inside of you, like we, Leslie, we forgot the toes. We need to talk about the toes.
Oh, it appears that things were working out okay on their own.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
God.
And then we come in and we're like, what? We chose this life? We chose these parents? But that's the learning. For me, it's like sort of going back, almost like a video camera. Remember the old video recorders where you rewind, you push rewind, and then you push pause? It's like
Yeah.
we're rewinding, and then we have sort of a slow mo. And when we have the slow motion, it's like, oh, that's where the knowing comes. That's where the energy, the sensation is felt. And you are correct. It's like letting the body just express. And because we're definitely not taught that. We're not taught how to let the body just let go because the mind goes, mm-mm, that just embarrassed me. I cannot say anything. But the vibration is there, the holding is there,
You're sensitive with that too.
very
You
much
know,
so.
you're bringing up, as you're bringing this up, I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about mothering. I'm thinking about my wife and how much I've learned, as we were talking about birth and pre-birth, how much I've learned from being a father and watching my wife mother and watching other women mother. My own relationship with my mother could have been stronger. I was premature and she didn't bond as well with me as she might have. She was quite young when she had me. So it's been especially healing for me to feel into the word is the bounty, the abundance of love that's coming out of a mother's heart. And I
Beautiful.
feel like you're in pointing to your heart and speaking about the essential, that being the essential place, the essence of the matter in a way.
Yes.
I feel like that's another way in which we need to touch in together in our collaboration is we need to touch in particularly to the great mother energies.
I just got the picture as you said that, like it's almost like our umbilical cord is exactly that. But at the same time, when you speak of mother energy, I'm thinking of mother nature. You know, it's like giving back. Like we've all got to tap in back into that, giving back to her.
I am too, and several places in my book, and the last words in my book are my simple core practice. I think my favorite spiritual practices are very simple, and it's please touch the earth with love. If you like, you might think of the story of King Midas and how everything he touched turned to gold. Well, you could go about touching things and thinking of them as turning into love. Or, but in the case of touching the earth with love, you don't even have to get your fingernails dirty, although it's great to get some dirt underneath. But
Yes.
just as you're walking, touch that tree or that earth with love. And I can't tell you to what degree millions of us doing that help, or all the wonderful farmers that are already doing that all over the world. But I like to feel like what we offer nature is our attention. Nature and our love. Nature offers this incredible and dignity of a flower tree in its depth and stillness. It touches something in us of appreciation. That's its gift to us. But our appreciation and our love, that's our gift in consciousness back to nature. So whether it's touching with one's heart, mind, and energy, or one's actual hand or feet, bare feet, ideally, as you were saying earlier,
Yes.
I think that's a very kind of humble, down to earth way of adding to our sense of agency and our sense of connection,
Mm, mm.
and therefore diminishing our sense of helplessness and anxiety, ideally.
Yes, absolutely. And um, oh gosh, we could just carry on because I know you have such a wealth of wisdom. And my chin and cheeks are actually sore from smiling at you. Like I've just
Oh, I
sat with
feel
this
it all
grin, like a
around. Well,
Cheshire cat.
thank you. I'm appreciating hearing from you too.
Oh,
In
thank
these
you.
podcasts, do you sometimes get into this kind of back and forth? Because I think it's really very lively and I appreciate it. Not
Oh,
everybody
thank
does
you
this.
so much. And you've absolutely, I mean, okay, I want to end off because you've ended off so eloquently and beautifully with just, you know, expressing love. But you have that beautiful art behind you. And is that one of your ancestral? Yes. Is that one of your, like, it just feels, I keep being pulled to
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. That's Sri Ramana Maharshi, the great sage of southern India who died in 1950 and who, like other holy people, both known and unknown, after their deaths continue to be of great service because of what they've come to by way of letting go into reality and opening and surrendering. And he has appeared both physically, as a materialization and also um, as an influence, a spiritual influence without an appearance in a number of lives. And he's appeared in my life like that, and is like any great teacher, they want you to know that you are what they are too, and
Yes.
unlimited, unbounded, undivided, whole, sacred. All the holy books are about you, my friends. And so it's a picture of him. And that brought me to wondering about you, whether, in fact, there have been certain people in your life who've also helped you with the raising of your vibrations.
Very much so. Yes. And I was actually sharing with my husband last night one of my first teachers that came into my space when I was 32, 33 years old was a mother figure to me. And she pushed me the hardest. She triggered me. She kind of like exposed me in so many ways, but it was for the greater good of myself. And there's such unconditional love because there was there were just stories behind stories that had happened, and we just got stuck. I got stuck on the stories, and eventually I just let go of the stories. And I just know that the connection, she had shared so much with me that I've now am relearning and I'm like so grateful to the universe. I'm so grateful to Source. I'm so grateful to God because at the time I was so in my head that I couldn't comprehend dropping into my heart
Oh, so
and
you
coming
get to
to
revisit. You get
yes,
to revisit this. Oh,
yes, exactly. So it's just for me, there's always a student and teacher playing itself out. You know, even with my clients, I'd say, you're teaching me, we're reflecting something in some way, and I see cycles that happen, and I'm like, oh, there's frustration happening with every single one of my clients this week. Alrighty, where's the unconscious energy? What I need to look at my shit. um
very
I'm
useful.
very much of that expression.
Self-responsible. You know that I'm aware that time must be kind of passing here.
I
I want to
know,
end.
it's like, I know, I'm always like when you say pause time.
But you're taking responsibility right there, like you do for your own part in it. It just sounds like it broadcasts to others a kind of openness to and a lack of judgment.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that. You know, sometimes I don't know. I sort of go blindly and then I trust and then I'm like, alrighty, got it. Yep. And then I go, okay, now okay, I can take a big breath and then it's that's part of the human experience, I believe, is that I like to share the openness of where we're at because you're a teacher, I'm a teacher, you're a student, I'm a student, and the reality is that we're all learning from one another, and that's the connection of how we come together. And it's a beautiful space to just be and show up in our own way. And who says it's right or wrong? It just is, and that's the yeah, just where we at, and I'm so grateful to you for the work that you are doing for humans and for us collectively. And I look forward to reading your book, and I look forward to listening to your songs. And
Enjoy. The book will be available, if it's not already, in the next few days on Amazon and any. The book is free if you want it. It's there at my website. But if you buy a physical copy, I will give any profits to two different 501c nonprofit organizations. I won't go into detail about that. You can see that when you access the book for free. But anyway, it's all a delight to be able to share with you and to hear your sharing too. Thank you.
thank you, and
I
thank you
hope
for
that all of your
asking.
listeners feel some kind of blessing from this to do your own thing as you approach these matters of caring for our Mother Earth. To find your own way to approach them. Every little bit really does help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for being here and keeping it real today. And guys, thank you for joining us. And as you can see, I'm incredibly blessed. I mean, like, how can my day be any worse than like if I'm gonna make it a bad day, then I've got my shit to look at because this is a great start to my day.
Oh, what time is it there?
Well, I was because of the time clocks and the differences, I was already up and about at 7 o'clock this morning, but it's now 10:30 in the morning, and I think it's but 3:30 in your afternoon, Jeff.
Yeah, it's 5:28 here in the
Yeah.
Midwest.
Yeah.
Have a
So
good day.
thank you so much, and have a good evening. And guys, please comment, and I'm going to put all Jeff's details down. And as you can well see and hear, he's, for me, without making an assumption, you're just one of the most gentlest, kindest, humblest men that I have the privilege of having here today. So thank you, and thank you for sharing your beautiful voice and your poems. Um, I am I'm on a high once again, so I need to ground myself. I drive my family mad because I'm like la 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 la, and then I've got to go back into normal life.
Or you drive them happily, happily.
At times, that's debatable.
Right, not driven. All right.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. We'll
See you
definitely have
later.
you back on. Have a
Bye
beautiful
bye.
day, guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye.